Hello, this is GEFerris, your narrator. We are going to Arctic Bay, Canada. This is going to be another solo kayak expedition of mine. I have consulted with Glenn Williams at the Renewable Resources up in Arctic Bay to find out what it was like. And before he left and I left, he said that it was going to be late this year for the ice to go out. And we are looking out the window of a 737 Boeing on our way up to Nanisivik, which is where the airport is. And we're flying over Fox Basin, which is the eastern side of Baffin Island, a very flat area. Now we're on the final approach to Nanisivik, and we're looking down over some open water of Arctic Bay. Now we're looking out over at Admiralty Inlet, where the ice has accumulated along the west shore, and we'll have a view of Strathcona Sound. It was an interesting flight up, very beautiful. As I was looking out my airplane window at that jumble of ice below, the only thing I knew was, well, the ice is supposed to be going out. Now in this picture is Victor Bay, clogged with ice, and the open area is Arctic Bay, where I would be paddling from. Now we are on final approach to Nanisivik, having a last look at the ice out on Admiralty Inlet. And the pink color of the soil is due to its high iron content. Nanisivik is an iron pyrite mine. Glenn Williams, the Renewable Resources Officer of Arctic Bay, told me that there was a traditional Baffin Island kayak here in town that I could go and look at. This kayak was similar to what I had seen in Pond Inlet. This is a traditional Baffin Island kayak lying on its deck. Here is the clipper bow, and now we're looking toward the stern. You'll notice that this is a multi-chined boat. It is also very beamy because there is very strong wind in this area. The houses are traditionally built round. One side is caved in because the skin has shrunken so intensely that it's brought it down. However, you'll notice that this kayak is multi-chined, which is very typical of this area, and it's very carefully designed to carry objects on the deck. The cockpit is a typical D shape, and the frame members are thicker and heavier than what you would see in Greenland, but still tied. Here's the cockpit again, and here's the interior to show you the rib, how distorted it has become midship from the pressure of the skin shrinking on the kayak. Traditionally during the winter, the skin is removed to prevent such shrinkage damage. Here is the stern, how it cuts away. Here is the deck to show you the width of the boat. And this is to illustrate the rocker. These boats have a lot of rocker due to the ice. I'm looking at the water, and this is the ice condition the very first day I was at Arctic Bay. However, the next day, I'm standing here at 73 degrees north, 85 degrees west, Arctic Bay, Northwest Territories, Canada. I'm glad I brought my GPS. Weather was here the day before yesterday. Now we have light rain and fog. I'm looking out toward Admiralty Inlet, which is fogged in, and we're on Adams Sound. The ice is moving along in the currents, and it's a great game to play, trying to figure out It's stable enough and thick enough that you can actually get out and jump around on it. This is annual ice. It's about 2 to 3 feet thick. And I'm planning to head down this sound, Adams Sound. However, we had this constant group of ice going back and forth. It's just a big jumble, constantly in fluctuation with the tides. So to go places at this point in time in July where the ice is trying to go out, you sort of have to pick and choose before you're going to make a crossing, because you can't always just pedal across. Now right there is a clear area, and it's very curious out there in this particular point, the entrance to Arctic Bay, that at the change in tides for several hours there's a rip that occurs right in this area. The waves seem to be breaking to the west. It's a very interesting area. The ice is due to leave this area in a week anyway. I came slightly early, knowing perfectly well that ice was probably going to be here. It's constantly rotating, going from place to place. It's a good source of drinking water, because the salt leaches out during the winter. You just let them sit in a pot for a few hours and you have the pure, clear, fresh drinking water. What is interesting in this gabbro rock outcrop, just sort of a form of granite, is there is some malachite leaching out, which is quite interesting. It's very pretty, bright green on this mottled gray rock surface. There's also limestone and quartzite in this area as well. It's all metamorphosed sediments and igneous intrusions that are metamorphosed. Looking back from this rock outcrop is remains of one of several houses here in this area. And they are quite a bit larger than what I have seen in Greenland. This was a favorite site to live. Very likely for whale hunting it was especially important. Many whales come to this area. Beluga, narwhal, humpbacks. So it's a very exciting place to be. Hidden in these areas are remains of many subterranean houses all along this edge of the water. So from here people had a good view of whales passing through. They come every year into these areas. There's also a good population of Arctic char and lots of seal. It's a wonderful place for hunting. There's also caribou on the land. And so it's not surprising to see huge chunks of bone sitting around, remains of whales from bygone days. This is to show you the view from the doorway of an ancient home. Up on the cliff in open air, I came across this Oxytropis, and here's another one. They're both legumes. I'd not seen them before in Greenland, where I've been. And here is one in the mustard family, which was very pretty to look at. Small plant. This is my second day on the water. I'm going down Adams Sound to look at a waterfall. We have mixed clouds. I've just gotten on the water. There's about a 10-12 knot following wind, and I'm heading eastward. Behind me to the west was ice out on Admiralty Inlet. However, I was riding an incoming tide, which was also being helped by the wind as well from the west pushing me. When I took off heading east with the wind out of the west and a high tide filling in behind me, I thought this is a very nice free ride. I wanted to record for you some of the sounds you hear when you're listening to ice on the water with a slight channel. This is much lower. This ice also has another sound, and it's quite fragmented. It's melting away very quickly. There goes a glaucous gull, and in contrast it's fun to watch the northern fulmars, which fly with very straight wings. This is two fronts colliding as I'm looking eastward down Adams Sound. These severely blown out clouds here, simple little clouds that have enough wind that they're blown into this lenticular shape from some other shape, probably stratus clouds. The wind was coming out of the west at 10 and now it's back eddying. Tide is coming in at the moment still. Well, it looks pretty innocent this morning. It looks pretty feisty right now. You see crisscrossing fronts here. This area does get very high winds. They had a storm last week. They had gusts 70 to 80 knots with a steady 40-knot wind. This is a fast game of Beat the Berg. I just decided I think I'm going to quit this game. Because there's no sense playing games with these sharp things. They're nasty, and especially when they're coming right at you. And it looks to me like the tide's given up and it's going out anyway, against the way I'm going. Notice how the ice is coming in and spinning around. As I paddled in this area, this was a constant situation I had to consider all the time. Across the way are some clouds. Well, I can't imagine ever having seen before. Now a few minutes have passed, and this is the next cloud formation. Something I've never in all my wildest dreams imagined could be. During the night, the ice stacked up soundlessly, exactly where I had thought about putting my tent up. Boy, was I glad I chose not to use that spot. At the moment, I'm slightly iced in. Yesterday, it was clear from here down to the farthest point you can see. But today, the ice is moving out from the upper end of Adams Sound. So today I'm standing here waiting for things to change. I have another 7 miles to go to get to the falls that I planned on going to. But with this kind of ice situation, it's hard to say if it's going to clear out within a reasonable time. However, everywhere in this area, the ice is coming and going, and it's just hard to say where it's going to be open so that I can come in and out of shoreline. It fluctuates with the winds and the tides. This area is comprised of metamorphosed silicaceous sediments. And here's one of the typical rocks. The swirls and the shapes were absolutely dazzling, and the colors of this rock with lichens encrusted on it were really dazzling. It's one of the more beautiful little flowers. Melandrium affini. This is a legume, Oxytropis. In the pea family, it's a legume and it's edible, the flowers. By extraordinary luck, I just happened to get this video footage of a bumblebee. This metamorphosed quartzite is loaded with hematite. I didn't have to go very far to find water where I was camping. Some pedicularis laconica, the common Arctic poppy. Another Oxytropis, a legume. Another edible plant, Polygonium bistort, otherwise known as bistort. A pretty little bell-shaped flower, Campanula, just below pedicularis. Nestled among Arctic heath. Lovely clusters of Stellaria longipeps. Nice to see. Some color in the ice from last year. And some color in the rocks. Oxides of iron and other minerals. Inclusions within fairly pure silica to give color. Some more brilliant color. Looks like red feldspar here. In nice black noise. Just some more sediments to enjoy looking at. In various layers of deposition. It's quite interesting. A metamorphic rock. The effects of a little contact metamorphosis. A nice example of where pressure and heat have altered the structure of the rock. And here's another one, different sound. Totally different composition. Some more beautiful swirls. This morning we had clear skies. Now it's changing, and we're getting altostratus as altocumulus. It's all coming in from the west. Barometric pressure 10:11 at 4 o'clock, July 25th. I'm recording for you what 10 knots of wind sounds like when it's hitting ice. It's melting very rapidly. It sounds like a glass of ginger ale. Very interesting. An hour has passed, and this is what the clouds have decided to do. Barometer dropped to 7 at 2100. Just to show you my campsite this morning. So we are witnessing the development of stratus clouds blowing from the east up this fjord, gradually coming in, and actually the wind really is from the west. So we have stratocumulus clouds here hanging in this fjord now, working their way up through. A minute ago it looked just not too bad. Now it's not nice at all. And I want to show you this ice here on the shoreline. These pieces are huge. It is somewhat by luck and good fortune I chose to camp in an old tent ring that other people use. And there's good reason for the position of that tent ring now that I look at this ice sitting here, which could have been on top of me or my boat. It was seeming to me as though it was a little bit cold out. Now I realize I wasn't imagining that it was cold. It snowed. Just below where the snow has occurred. Now that I'm on my way, and I've decided, since the ice hasn't gone out, just head back west. I have a rainbow. And finally, after lots of aggravation, I'm on my way. I'm not going to continue east because there's a jumble of ice up that end and I don't think it's worth bothering with. I think I'll go back down the other end and enjoy chatting with the local people, if I can get there. However, we have a nice rainbow to head me out. I've made it this far today. I am at the end of Adams Sound where it branches into Arctic Bay. But I found at the very tip that it was closed in by massive sheets of ice. And so I had to backtrack for a mile to find a place for camping. Now that same body of ice is loosening up and it's going out a bit. But it's hard to say if tomorrow I can pass beyond the final point or not. What I do notice is the perpetual movement of clouds in this area. Clouds in higher elevations are also on the go today. This area seems to have very turbulent weather at this time, constantly changing. This is the end of July. Rather interesting. 9:30 in the morning. And once again, we're drying out. But this is a very interesting area with ancient ruins to look at and different flowers. A spicy little mustard plant, delicious to eat, and a Mertensia maritima with its roots almost completely in the salt water. In this area are remains of ancient dwellings, and although this doesn't look like it's much of anything, it was once someone's shelter. And even beneath this rock was someone's shelter. Here is one of these shelters. And next to it is a larger structure. Whenever you see rocks piled on top of each other in this manner, you can be sure someone did this. Some of these might also have been meat caches. Once again, it's time for the Rusilla mushrooms to be growing. I ate Rusilla fried in butter in Pond Inlet. They were delicious. And this is a giant puffball that has come to full maturity. These fungi grow at the same size as in temperate zones. I got stuck in the ice. I had to wait for the ice to move with the tide. And I wound up climbing up on some rocks, sitting there for a couple hours. How I got stuck in the ice was I thought I could ram my ice up through right close to the rocks, and that there would be space between the rocks and the ice for me to get my boat up, around, and through past Holy Cross Point. However, When I turned around to look where I had just come from, it was all completely filled in with ice. So, being right next to the rocks, I stepped out on them, and the only place for miles around where I actually was able to scale the rocks, carrying with me my bow line, and had tied onto that a couple of other long lines, about 50 feet each. And so I was able to tie the boat off, bow and stern, to the rocks, and then just go up there and wait for the tide to turn. It was quite a scary experience to feel all that helpless. And I had so carefully come to this false conclusion that I could just squeeze myself along through the ice next to the rocks, and that there was going to be space for me to pass by the point next to the rocks. But that was completely false thinking. I was very glad I happened to be wearing some razor-cut sole sailing booties that gave me very good grip on the rocks, so that I could climb up the rocks and then just sit in comfort up above. Then from that, once the ice opened up and I went around the point, I attempted to cross to Johnson Point, and found once again that I couldn't make it through the ice. So my only other option was open water that was available on the east side of Arctic Bay. And even there I had a problem finding a place to camp, because on that side there were also dog teams tied off. So I had a good challenging experience, rather humiliating. But I learned one thing about ice is don't make any assumptions about it. It can squeeze in and fill in any area it can. This annual ice was about 10-12 inches thick. There were chunks that I could have risked getting out onto, but I didn't want to take any such chance. However, Glenn Williams had told me that people do camp on multi-year ice, and that is quite a bit thicker. I didn't have any crampons with me, so that I had no traction should I get out on a chunk of multi-year ice. And Glenn warned me, when you're gliding around, floating around on multi-year ice, be careful to keep an eye on where you're going. You might find yourself mired in a huge mass of ice. Well, I've made it back to Johnson Point, and this is an overview of Holy Cross Point, where I was trapped for a while by the ice, and a view down to the east. I had an experience with some very strong wind as I paddled from the east side to the west side of Arctic Bay. The closer I got to the town of Arctic Bay on the west side, the more intense the wind became. So it started out as like 10-15 knots, wound up being 20-25 knots broadside. I was glad I was in a clipper. And then from there I paddled out to Johnson Point, and as the closer I got to Johnson Point, the wind was so intense it was as though I were water skiing, only nobody was towing me. And I had to really lean out toward the wind on my paddle to stay upright. And then once I got near the point, I just kind of hung a quick corner and swung in to calm air and was able to set up my tent. This is a fast-moving cloud that's coming in off Admiralty Inlet. But this is amazingly fast. But in just moments, this whole situation is developing. The rest of the horizon just has these after cumulus clouds, and the wind is freshening here a little bit. Look, it's moved in just a minute. It's getting larger and coming inward, more easterly. The birds you hear in the background just happen to be ravens, and they like to be near civilization. It's a very powerful updraft on the right side. Watch the whole cloud tumbling uphill. It's almost like a reverse waterfall. Now it's moved off of the land back again, but it's continued to condense and rise higher and higher. I am now going back up Adams Sound. It's an overcast day, but still the views are very inspiring. I'm about 10 miles in from Arctic Bay, coming in on the tide. And that high peak on the left side, farthest away, I believe is where there's the waterfall that I am looking forward to going to visit. Another group of wind-bearing clouds are coming in, and the situation is once again very interesting visually, especially to see lenticular clouds developing because of such high winds aloft. It is a geologist's party. It is an area where some granitic minerals as a dike have intruded, and what is there in the gray is nice. Then there's quartzite, there's feldspar, and there's biotite, there's mica. There's all kinds of minerals mixed together, and makes it very exciting for viewing because you have incredible arrays of striations and swirls in the rocks. And from there, just to give you a feel. What's even more amusing, alright, this is right next door to an entirely different series of rocks. Up above, the Paleozoic quartzite cliffs, and it has varying degrees of intrusions of different minerals, but they're less metamorphosed, more the sedimentary type of deposits, so you don't get these wild swirls and colors that are temperature created. And next to that is an area of activity that was volcanic, so you get basaltic minerals and andesites and rutiles, all kinds of things. So walking the beach, you see incredible arrays from basalts to sedimentary rocks. But the Dolomite cliffs are about 15 miles away from here. They're entirely different assemblage of minerals. This area is very beautiful, and it is the entrance to the falls of the Adams River going into Adams Sound that we're looking on. Across the way is some more of these bedded rocks. This is the quartzite group again. It's amazing what's laying up on top of something else and up into it. It's just an incredible area for geologists to have a wonderful time. Just to illustrate the ice on August 2nd, 1994 in Adams Sound. Just to show you my tent site. And its surroundings. That's a Chenard Megalid. And there's my Clipper Aries 1 Expedition kayak. Show you the color of the rocks and the variety that I was talking about. Here's a metamorphosed piece of stone, and next to it is this ice which is now melting very rapidly and releasing its trapped nutrients back into the ecosystem to support the phyto and zooplankton bursting population. I found it very amusing to watch this chunk of ice outside of my tent being pushed around by the wind from one way and the tide from the opposite way. It's amusing to see how fast it is moving. Well, after 2 tries, I got down to the Adams River falls that I had heard about, and they really are truly beautiful. Most exciting to watch. Rather hard to believe there could be a waterfall. It really was a very bright, dazzling, hot day. And here is a photograph of the extensive filamentous blue-green algae growing in the river. Enormous amounts of water is released from the tundra above and all the meltwater, which also supplies a huge boost in organic nutrients flowing into Adams Sound, and inorganic minerals as well. I set my video camera on a rock to take a picture of myself so that you could see, yes, I was there at the Adams River Falls. Well, I've come east to about 84 degrees in 10 minutes. And it looks to me like I've gotten down far enough so that we're back into the ice world again. And I'm going to have to put ashore and camp and wait and see when this blockage here decides to move out. I'm glad it's going out. It's going to look for the best. I've had a following wind all afternoon. One of those onshore breeze types of winds. I've had about 15 miles down here. And I've seen nothing but glaucous gulls. I had come upon another ice jam, but luckily when I pulled ashore and waited for a short while, the tide changed and it broke up so that I could continue all the way down to the very end of Adams Sound. It's 10:45 tonight, August 3rd, and we had a very nice fair weather day today. And these are the clouds tonight. They're cirrocumulus. It's now quieted down very much. We had a 15-knot wind out of the west all day, which really was cold air coming down this sound. This is a straight line, so I had an easy day. I didn't have to do anything except keep the boat going straight. Here we will not be getting sunsets until sometime in the middle of August. So unless it's an overcast day, it's pretty bright, even at midnight. In August, everything is greening up considerably from what it was just a week ago. This area always has interesting volcanic strata in it. There's all kinds of minerals in this area.
And looking at this piece of ice, if you're in Greenland, you would automatically assume it would have to be glacial. But in this instance, we're not in an area where there are icebergs. This is a multi-year piece of ice that is grounded temporarily. And what gives that away about it is that if you look at it closely, you'll see everything is horizontally oriented on it. There's nothing to show that it has changed its center of gravity at any time. Being laid out horizontally as this ice in the foreground, it's just built up from year to year.
Paddling back out of Adams Sound, I happened to catch sight of these rock formations, which by chance had eroded into the shape, suggesting they could be people standing over there. They certainly looked a little eerie, and the local Inuit people in Arctic Bay told me that if Adams Sound looked dark, don't go there. And what that means, although it might suggest that Adams Sound is haunted, is that there is a storm down in the sound. And that was just exactly what came upon me as I started paddling back out of Adams Sound.
What started out as a fairly innocent paddle turned out to be a raucous battle with a slight wind that's coming in. And I found this little place of refuge here, which is tucked between the rock faces. Up there are clouds that show that there's a lot of wind. We had maybe 20 knots here and there, but it's continuing. The sun is breaking through. It's 1 o'clock in the morning on August 7th. And I have quite a few more miles to go with this kind of stuff, so I decided to just quit.
We got on the water at about 9 o'clock in the evening, and as I started out my crossing, I looked out to the west of me and saw there was silver water about 10 miles away. I didn't quite realize that that was a bunch of breaking waves from strong wind that was going to be on me in a very short time. I found myself committed to paddling broadside to a good 20-knot wind with waves that were occasionally slapping me in the face, because downwind of me was a boulder-strewn beach where the water had no place to go. That was why it was building up so greatly. I continued onward into the 20-knot wind and slugged my way up the coast until I came to this one point of refuge where I was very glad I was able to pull in, even though there were no accommodations such as any available water. It didn't matter. I was exhausted and I couldn't continue onward.
These are the organisms that are occurring in August. This is the beginning of the second week of August. Burrowing jellyfish, ctenophore, other items. They all have one color in common, that is this brilliant orange-red color. Also pteropods.
I found an oil slick on the water because the eruption of phytoplankton He's so huge that they can develop an oil slick. Glenn Williams, the Renewable Resources Officer, has been helping the people get back into kayaking. And here is a photograph of some kids having a great time out on the water on large chunks of styrofoam. This last time I got back to Arctic Bay without any huge problems, and I must say, thanks to Glenn Williams, I had a pretty good idea of what was happening, because watching the ice go back and forth was a very daunting experience. I did go up over and take a look at Victor Bay, which was just simply closed in with ice. I asked Glenn Williams, well, how do you get around in this area with these ice conditions? And he said, I have an ultralight airplane that I am working on using, because there really are times when nothing else can be used. I was very lucky. I never did have any encounters with polar bears, although others have had many times where polar bears come in. Glenn Williams gave me some 000 buck. I was required to carry a shotgun, so I brought a Mossberg Mariner. I used a Sony 8mm video camera, which functioned beautifully, and a Garmin GPS 50. I was very pleased with the seaworthiness of my Klepper Arius 1 and its excellent barn door rudder.